Welcome to the Recaps channel. In today's video, we'll recap Whiplash. Let's get started. Andrew Neiman is a first-year student at the prestigious Schaefer Conservatory in New York City. He idolizes jazz drummer Buddy Rich and hopes to leave a lasting legacy like his childhood hero. Terence Fletcher, the conductor of the Schaefer Conservatory studio band, visits him one night while practicing. Fletcher asks why Andrew stopped playing when he knows he's looking for studio band players. Andrew plays again to showcase his skills, but Fletcher says that he did not ask Andrew to keep playing. Fletcher then instructs Andrew to play but leaves the room suddenly, seemingly unimpressed. Later, Andrew shares his unpleasant meeting with Fletcher with his father, Jim, at the movies. The next day in class, Andrew assists Ryan Connolly, the core drummer. Before leaving, Andrew peeks into Fletcher's class to observe the studio band. Andrew continues to practice diligently. One day, Fletcher enters their band practice and instructs Ryan to play. He then listens briefly to Andrew. Fletcher tells Andrew to be in room B16 the following morning at 6 a.m. Later, he meets Nicole, who works at the cinema, and asks her out. The next morning, Andrew wakes up late. When he arrives at the studio, he realizes that the class starts at 9 a.m., not 6 a.m. Andrew waits at the drum kit for 3 hours until the other musicians arrive. Carl Tanner, the core drummer, meets Andrew and gives him instructions. Fletcher arrives precisely at 9 a.m. He chooses a piece for them to play and introduces Andrew, calling him a squeaker as he is only 19. During the performance, Fletcher suddenly stops the band. He expresses his disappointment with an out-of-tune player and confronts a nervous student named Metz. He berates Metz and Metz tearfully admits his mistake, and Fletcher berates him further, eventually dismissing him from the class. Fletcher clarifies that Metz wasn't the one out of tune, but Metz's not knowing if he was out of tune was unacceptable. During a break, Fletcher talks to Andrew about his family. Andrew reveals that there are no musicians in his family, and Fletcher gives him advice. With newfound confidence, Andrew returns to class as the core drummer alongside Tanner as an alternate. However, Fletcher repeatedly stops Andrew, growing angrier as he struggles with tempo. Fletcher throws a chair at Andrew, narrowly missing him, and aggressively approaches him, demanding that Andrew look at him and count the tempo in 4. Fletcher slaps Andrew's face with each count, questioning if he's playing too quickly or too slowly. Andrew admits his mistake of playing too quickly, provoking further berating and threats from Fletcher. Fletcher mocks Andrew's ability to read tempo and music. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Andrew holds back tears as Fletcher continues to reprimand him. Fletcher insists that Andrew loudly shout, "I'm upset," to degrade him further in front of the band. He belittles Andrew's family based on the earlier conversation. Tanner returns as the core drummer, with Andrew beside him, and they resume playing Whiplash. Later, a tired and demoralized Andrew sits alone in his room. Determined, he resumes practicing, not stopping even after his hands start bleeding. Later, Nicole joins him for pizza, and they share stories about their lives. At the Overbrook Jazz competition, Fletcher maintains his pattern of verbal abuse as he gives the band last-minute instructions before they go on stage. Afterwards, Tanner hands Andrew the folder containing the sheet music for the second set and asks him to keep it safe. Andrew places the folder on a chair as he goes to buy from a vending machine. When Tanner returns, Andrew discovers that the folder is missing. They inform Fletcher. Unfortunately, Tanner relies on the sheet music and cannot play from memory. Andrew steps in and says that he has memorized the song. The band returns to the stage, with Andrew as the core drummer. Tanner is then demoted, and Andrew takes his place. During a family dinner, Andrew proudly shares the news that he has become a core member of the studio band even though his family does not seem to fully support him. After a band practice session, Fletcher discusses a double-time swing tempo with Andrew, mentioning that he encountered another talented drummer in the practice room. Andrew is surprised when Ryan Connolly arrives to try out for the position in the upcoming competition. Fletcher pits Andrew and Connolly against each other, eventually dismissing Andrew for playing the wrong tempo. Fletcher declares Connolly as the new core drummer. Andrew follows Fletcher into the office and argues that he deserves to be core drummer. Fletcher states that if he wants the part, he must earn it. Andrew then meets Nicole and breaks up with her because their relationship hinders his progress. Driven by frustration, Andrew returns to practice the song, Caravan. Despite his bleeding hand, Andrew continues playing, venting his anger and frustration through his music. At a later band practice, Fletcher shares the story of Sean Casey, a former student. Fletcher describes how Casey displayed drive and potential, persevered against the odds, and eventually became the first trumpet player at Lincoln Center. In a tearful tone, Fletcher informs the students that Sean passed away in a car accident the previous day. The band proceeds to rehearse Caravan, but Ryan Connolly struggles with the tempo. Andrew is then given an opportunity to earn the part, but he, too, fails to please Fletcher. Tanner is called back to try out, but he also falls short. Connolly is instructed to return to the drums, and Fletcher states that they will continue playing until one of them succeeds. During the relentless practice, Andrew endures belittlement and verbal abuse from Fletcher as he pushes the drummers to their limits, aiming to regain their position as the core drummer. Fletcher insults their abilities repeatedly as they struggle to play to the correct tempo. In a fit of frustration, Fletcher throws a drum and kicks furniture as he circles around Andrew, relentlessly shouting at him to play faster. Despite the pain, Andrew perseveres. Eventually, Fletcher acknowledges that Andrew has earned back his position as the core drummer. On the way to the Dunellen Jazz competition, Andrew's bus breaks down, forcing him to rent a car. In his haste, he forgets his drumsticks at the rental office. He arrives late to the practice session, and an irate Fletcher launches into another insulting tirade, informing Andrew that he has lost the core drummer position, further fueling Andrew's anger. Andrew confronts Fletcher, asserting that he earned his place in the band. Fletcher says that the only reason Andrew became the core drummer was because he misplaced Tanner's folder. Andrew convinces Fletcher to wait for him. Desperate to make it in time, Andrew gets involved in a car accident on his way back. Despite his injuries, Andrew crawls out of the wreckage and rushes to the theater, arriving just as the ensemble is about to perform. Severely hurt, he struggles to play Caravan, and Fletcher stops the performance, dismissing Andrew from the band. Overwhelmed by anger and frustration, Andrew attacks Fletcher on stage before being restrained by security and ultimately expelled from Schaefer Conservatory. At the urging of his father, Andrew meets with a lawyer representing the parents of Sean Casey. Andrew learns that Casey took his own life due to depression and anxiety caused by Fletcher's abusive behavior. Casey did not die in a car accident, as Fletcher had told the band. The Casey family wants Fletcher to be held accountable, and Andrew agrees to testify anonymously. As a result, Schaefer terminates Fletcher's employment. Andrew, devastated by the entire experience, gives up on his drumming aspirations. Months later, Andrew encounters Fletcher playing piano at a jazz club. They engage in conversation, during which Fletcher admits that his teaching methods were harsh but believes they were necessary to push his students toward success. He cites the example of Charlie Parker's rise to fame as validation for his approach. Fletcher invites Andrew to perform with his band at the JVC Jazz Festival, promising that they will play the same songs Andrew knows from the studio band. Reluctantly, Andrew accepts the invitation. However, when he reaches out to Nicole and invites her to the performance, he discovers that she is in a new relationship. On stage at the JVC Jazz Festival, before the first piece begins, Fletcher reveals that he is aware of Andrew's anonymous testimony against him. Seeking revenge, Fletcher leads the band into a song that Andrew is unfamiliar with and for which he lacks the sheet music. The performance becomes a disaster, and Andrew walks off stage in humiliation. However, he musters the courage to return and interrupts Fletcher's introduction to the next piece by playing the intro to Caravan, taking control and cueing the band himself. Initially enraged, Fletcher eventually resumes conducting. As the piece concludes, Andrew launches into an extended, unexpected solo. Impressed by Andrew's skill and tenacity, Fletcher nods in approval before signaling the band for the finale. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share if you enjoyed the video. See you again here on the Recaps channel.